Hi everyone. My name is, am I getting translated? Yeah? Yes. Judy? Oh yeah. We're on. Okay. Hi. My name is Fiona Earley and I'm from Dublin, Ireland. My role is to help make Dublin City University autism friendly. It's a 3-year project and I'm going to talk a little bit about today about what we're doing. And then I'll answer questions after. So, oh, is this to move on? Oh, that one. Okay, I can use that. Okay, so I know we've talked a lot about what autism is, so I'll go through this quickly. So autism. Autism is pervasive, neurological and development. So they're all big words, quite complicated because that's what scientists say. But I'll explain it in simpler terms. Pervasive, neurological, developmental. What does that mean? So it means it doesn't affect one part of a person, it affects every single part of a person's life. For example, experiences, memories, interaction, personality, thinking style, senses, learning style, and communication style. So it's not just one part of a person, it is the person. Neurological is brain. So the structure of the brain, research is saying, may be slightly different, the way the brain is mapped out. The brain works differently together. Some parts of the brain are stronger and some parts are weaker, like everyone else. Developmental autism begins before birth. It is not caught, and it's 100% not caught by vaccines. It just means people think and see the world differently. So they grow, learn, and develop differently, as does every other person in the universe. Most people that I work with are saying that it's not a case of I am less autistic or I am more autistic. They say that it changes in their circumstances. So it's more like a rainbow. For example, communication and social skills one day might be quite good, and another day, because the person or neurotypical people or the environment is different, is overwhelming, the social skills, communications, they need more support in it. So it changes. But what a lot of autistic people are saying is they want to move away from this scale, because it's not really a scale, it's a constellation. So just a little bit about language. So I work with a lot of autistic people who would say, for example, they'll say, I am autistic, because that person believes they don't have autism because they define themselves as an autistic person. Other people say, I have autism. Really, you ask the person what language they prefer. People on the spectrum is also used, and person with autism. So some of the students that I spoke to, language that they find offensive includes suffers from, because as soon as you say the word suffer, that turns the person into a victim. And a lot of autistic people are saying, I am autistic and I'm proud of it. I don't suffer from it. Kanner's autism. Asperger's syndrome is a mild form of autism. People are saying that, again, going back to their support needs differ. It doesn't mean that their autism is higher or lower, but their support needs differ, and that can change day to day. Normal developing children, adults, there is no such thing as normal. Just last week, somebody said to me, the best way to define normal, or the only way to define normal, is by, it's a setting on a washing machine, that normal, it doesn't exist. Disorder. Autistic students are saying to me, it's not a disorder, it's a different way of thinking and a different way of seeing the world. So some challenges: social and communication, imagination, not always imagination. I work with students who have vast, unique imaginations, really, really expressive. Sensory processing, again, that's a different way the brain works. Most of it is based on how neurotypical people deliver their communication. It makes it difficult for autistic people to understand it. Concentration, again, that's to do with the environment, lighting, noise, smells, movement, unpredictable sounds. Coordination, stimming. I don't know if stimming is a common word here. Stimming really isn't a challenge. Stimming is a challenge to neurotypical people because it makes them feel uncomfortable. But everyone stims. We all do different things like this or this when we're nervous. Autistic people may jump more, they may flap their hands, they may use fidgets. And sometimes they're doing it when they're happy, and sometimes they're doing it when they're anxious. It's not always to do with anxiety. A lot of students I work with, they stim when they're really excited and happy, not because they're stressed. Anxiety, and that's due to everything, this society, and related conditions. So strengths and how they help students in third level education. And I think we spoke a little bit about it here. High motivation to learn in a focused area of interest. For example, I don't know if you've heard of Greta Thunberg, but she's a world famous climate activist, and Steve Silverman, who does a lot of research, he would say now things are changing. Attitudes, people are saying that Greta has done so well and she's very articulate and amazing because she is autistic. Whereas maybe 10 years ago, it would have been kind of a superhero attitude. People would have said, isn't it brilliant? She's autistic and she can do this. Whereas now it's changing to, actually, it's because she's autistic that she's succeeding this way. Attention to detail when motivated. Skilled rote memory, again, when motivated. A really logical way of thinking and coming up with practical solutions. So I regularly meet groups of maybe 20, 30 autistic students, and I'd be the only neurotypical person in the group, and I'm just way, way, way behind in coming up with solutions. It's just a much clearer way of thinking. Loyalty and honesty, and diversity. So what is Dublin City University doing? So the question was, why did we focus the university on autism? Why wasn't it for blind people or people who use wheelchairs, different disabilities? Well, there was three main reasons. One, the life expectancy for autistic people is generally 30 years shorter, and I'll tell you why, than the general population, and this is research in 2016. Autistic adults who do not have a learning disability are 9 times more likely to die by suicide in comparison to the general population. And unemployment is 80% in the community, regardless of education. So there's a lot of students leaving DCU, leaving Trinity on the autistic spectrum with doctorates, with degrees, with masters, and they're unemployed. So why is this? What's the cause of those figures? Lack of understanding, generally in the world. For the autistic person themselves, lack of self-acceptance. So that can be related to bullying all through primary, all through secondary school, and it instills in the person a sense that they are less than other people. Lack of community, lack of friends. The physical environment is really, really important, and it causes huge anxiety, I think, for everyone, because we're being bombarded a lot by sensory stimuli these days, but more so for autistic people. So what are some of the solutions? I'm just keeping an eye on my time here. Okay, so some solutions. Celebrate autistic culture and achievement. Adapt the environment, create a culture of understanding and acceptance. So GCU, first of all, did 18 months research before they became autism friendly. And out of that research, we spoke to a lot of students, well, probably actually 55 students, many other students. And out of those 55 students, only half of them had disclosed that they were autistic to DCU. Dublin City University. So this is what they said were their main issues. Talking to people, not knowing what to expect, meeting people with similar interests, being part of a group and group work grievances. I think every student finds group work hard, but autistic people tend to find it harder because neurotypical people don't really say what they mean or mean what they say. talk quite confusing, grey language. We're not clear in what we say. Routine established around study and assignments. Heightened sensory awareness of noise with the environment. So within a lecture hall, it can be an absolute, really torturous nightmare. The lights, the noise, the smells, sound from projectors, sounds from fans, electricity going through the walls. Autistic students are telling me they're hearing like noise, electricity from outside alarm doors. Navigation is a huge issue, finding your way to the university first, but then finding your way to the actual lecture hall. We have a lot of quiet spaces designated, but really there's no point having quiet spaces if students can't get to the quiet space when they're feeling anxious. Because when a student is feeling anxious, they're less able to think clearly, so they're less able to find the quiet space. So we need to develop apps like Google Maps for indoors to get students from a lecture hall to a quiet space or to the canteen. So it's important to say that 54% of autistic students didn't disclose their diagnosis out of fear of stigma. This is an over-exaggerated video, but I showed this to autistic students in DCU. There was 30 students watching it, and 22 students said they feel like quite similar to this when they're in a lecture hall. So I'll just play it if I... So again, it's exaggerated, but students have said this is how they feel. It's quite loud. It's loud.
Why don't you pull over to the nervous breakdown lane? Hey, Weezy Jefferson, bring it down a notch.
So that's just to, I suppose, to explain more simply what students are telling me, what they are feeling during exam time and during lecture time. Okay, chocolate. So DCU has come up with 7 principles of what makes what would make a university autism friendly. All of these principles are based on nearly 2 years of research, so they weren't just plucked from the ground. So principle 1 is encourage and enable autistic students to transition and participate in university. So for every principle action, I've just written a few bullet points of what we're doing. So that means linking with the community, so linking with primary schools, not just secondary, but you want to get primary school teachers to raise their expectations of their students who are on the autistic spectrum, so that even from primary school, from the age of 7, they are thinking about university. It's nearly too late when the student gets to 5th year in secondary school to think of it. So we do a lot of work with primary school teachers. We are developing a transition toolkit for students coming into university. So that's resources of what university looks like. Orientation. So orientation is a day when all first years, say 1,700 in DCU, come every September. So a lot of autistic students, a lot of students in general find it too noisy, too chaotic. So we live stream it. So orientation is full of talks and seminars. So we live stream it. We also have a room in the university, a quiet room where students can come and watch everything happening on it, on a big TV, on a screen, so they don't need to go out into the university for this really, it's a chaotic day. Students also will fill out a sensory profile before they start college, if they want, outlining their sensory needs, what they find challenging, and what they're really good at doing, so that before the student even starts, we know there are things that we need to get in place. Linking in with peers. We also, I won't play this video, but this is just a video showing a quiet space. So any events that the university holds, we would send out a video because it's better that everyone knows in advance. When I get to DCU for this big event, I know where the quiet room is. So the Autistic Community Society make videos, and they send them out ahead of the event so that people are prepared coming. They know where to escape to. It's too late when the person gets to the university and has a meltdown, can't think then where to go. This is the webpage. I can share the links afterwards. It's DCU Autism Friendly. So students can look up this first. They can fill in their sensory profile. It's full of resources for lecturers, for all staff working in DCU. So marketing and media is quite a big part of the project. Okay, the second principle, to support and build capacity to equip autistic students to meet the academic challenges. So I know we spoke a lot about academic challenges today. So some things we do, early orientation day. So we have a day where autistic students come in before the 1700 students come in, and we bring them on tours of the campus and show them all the quiet areas. Sensory profile. So extra time, smaller rooms, exams on disc. So lots of things to do with reading and lots of help to do with essay writing. We use mind maps for exams now. Lecturers are now beginning to realise that it shouldn't have to be you write an essay. It is now you write an essay or you make a video. They're marked the same. So they're moving away from this tunnel vision that everything needs to be written, because it absolutely doesn't. So their lecturers are beginning to be more creative, and students are now making videos instead of writing an essay. We use a lot of assistive technology. Most of it is free. Clara Read, recording devices. I can send on lists of things, but they're really good apps. Students download them. It looks like any other student. There's no stigma attached to it. We have an occupational therapist. We're very lucky. So they would help the students with their timetables and goal setting. Oh, I just want to go back to this. So this is something that we do through lectures.
This one? Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think I have. No, it's not that one.
No, it's up here.
So just talking about social support. So 2 hours for a lecture is very long for any student to be in, particularly for students who are struggling with the environment. So lecturers now play this regularly, every 60 minutes they'll play this in an exam, so we can do it. Breathe. So that's just an example of things that these things are benefiting every single student in the lecture, not just the student on the autistic spectrum. But it's good to see lecturers introducing this into the lecture room, and most lecturers would say that they found it beneficial for every student, everyone. Socially, so what can you do to practically support the social aspect of students in the classroom? So reduce anxiety by notifying ahead of time if group work is planned. Predictable routine, inform ahead if the routine is changing. Provide a schedule of classes at the beginning. Clarity about assessments and deadlines is really important. Clarity about what the question means and how it's marked. Autistic students may tend to write 2 pages because they're very highly motivated about one particular aspect, not realizing that that's not necessary. They need to break it down because they need to allocate time. So lecturers are now making the marking schemes much more clearer and doing a lot of work around the time allocation for each question.
Series where I teach you the breathing exercises. scientifically proven to relieve anxiety and stress.
Time management in the classroom. So support the autistic student to understand neurotypical behaviour, what we call the hidden curriculum. So really it's translating how neurotypicals behave, and this is what it might mean. For example, I might say to a student, if your lecturer is looking at his watch all the time, talking to you, that means this, or it means something else. But really, it's translating neurotypical behaviour because it's very confusing.
Exhaling for twice as long as you inhale.
What are the rules? So be very clear about the rules. There's no space for grey.
That's how it doubles.
We talk to a lot of lecturers about being clear about the expectations. Neurotypical people struggle with being, I think, probably honest and straightforward. Autistic people don't. So it's up to neurotypical people to assert themselves and to be more literal.
And also to help get better, more restful sleep.
Assignments, again, avoid brief assignments, vague. They can't be vague. It needs to be very clear, the marking scheme, the title.
Get your lungs about 75% full after inhaling for 4 seconds. Relax the shoulders as you
Oh,
exhale. Just
okay.
let them grow limp and heavy. And then the fourth tip is to inhale through the nose and exhale through your mouth. This will help you breathe.
You're breathing. Okay. So what we were talking about, literal. So autistic people, because just by nature they are more honest, they will pick up what you are saying literally. So just be conscious of what you say. When I work with students, I'm very conscious that I'm very clear and structured in everything I say. Avoid joking. Irish people, we use a lot of slang, we use a lot of grey language. It doesn't work. Try to offer just 2 choices, not more than that. Provide written instructions and clear required outcomes. Another good thing that lecturers are doing when they are providing feedback, they are letting the student record it on their phone, because what students are telling me is their supervisor or tutor is talking to them about their exams. They're not processing it. They leave, and then I ask what was said, and the student has no memory of what was said because they're quite nervous in the room or there's a sensory environment. So instead, they're putting their phone on the table, and the lecturer is consenting to having the feedback recorded, and that's working really well because then the student can listen to it 5 times if they need to. Be clear and patient. Give time to process and check again for understanding. Sensory motor. So this is about note-taking. Again, we use a lot of assistive technology for note-taking. When you're holding meetings, and we do a lot of training with employers as well, we stress that to keep the environment as calm as possible. Sometimes it works better to sit beside the person, not in front, because neurotypical people tend to like eye contact. Autistic people tend not to, not everyone, but eye contact can be quite difficult. So I would generally sit beside the person. I would never ask a person to sit directly in front of me. Always be aware of noises in the background. If it's only a little blur to you, if it's only a slight noise from projector, it can be like a train running through somebody on the autistic spectrum. And the lights, always check with the lights. So DCU at the moment is removing a lot of lighting because it's not LED, it's fluorescent lighting. Fluorescent lighting does 2 things. It gives the students a headache from the glare, and also there's a noise that neurotypical people cannot hear from fluorescent lighting, but the autistic people, students are hearing it really, really severely and getting a lot of headaches. So we're stripping all lighting that isn't LED, and it just it raised a very important topic that we need a framework for building going ahead, because when you do things retrospectively, it's very expensive. So if DCU had have known in advance the effect of fluorescent lighting, they wouldn't have done it, and now we're going back and taking it all out. Meetings, I've kind of discussed this. So this is the same for interviews. Like a lot of employers now are, for our students, they're sending the questions out in advance instead of just arriving at the interview and being questioned. Be clear, again, be very clear, be very honest, don't dilute it. Avoid jargon, minimize distractions, check the environment, quiet room, follow up, and consider sitting side by side. Social supports. So we run workshops in managing anxiety. We tend not to say that these workshops are for students on the spectrum. We just call them their mindfulness, their anxiety, and they're full every single time. Mindfulness is huge in DCU. Independent living skills, again, it's for all students because we don't want to create stigma, but we will make sure that all of the classes are very structured. Really important that the whole university is trained in autism, which we are doing at the moment. So that's training people who drive the bus, who work in the canteen, lecturers, academics, and most importantly, other students. So all students in clubs and societies are being trained in autism awareness too. Thinking of the environment and showing the student how they might adapt their own environment. Smell is quite a big thing, so a lot of students now will wear scarves and spray it with their favourite perfume. They'll have fidgets, they'll wear headphones. Any event we hold, we have a quiet time. Lunchtime as well is really, really noisy, and in the canteen we introduced a quiet hour. What we have found is with these quiet times, they became the busiest times. So this is all outdoor events, everything, any external events. We started off at one quiet hour, but what has happened now is we realise that people are only pretending they like noise and chaos. So, is that me or? Oh no, sorry. So the quiet hour now generally are quiet events. So in other words, when we have big events or quiet clubs and societies, we don't have any music and we don't have any tannoy announcements, and it's much busier. A lot of shops around DCU now have introduced quiet shopping hours. They dim the light downs, and they have got back to say that business has shut. Everyone is coming in to Little and Aldi for the quiet hours. So quiet hour in Little and Aldi, say in Dublin, is every Wednesday and Thursday. It's now 5 days a week. So it benefits everyone. We formed a Neurodivergent Society. The society is people on the autistic spectrum, dyslexic and dyspraxic. And that's really, really important. It was quite difficult to form because people didn't want to come forward, but we got one really strong chairperson. And with on the last open day, there is now 35 students signed up on the autistic spectrum who are in the society. Autism-friendly events. So what does an autism-friendly event look like? So you have a statement to say this event is autism-friendly. You have a quiet area. A quiet area doesn't add any extra expense. Basically, it's a dark room. Quiet times. If you cannot find a space, a quiet room, you have a quiet hour. But you must advertise it. You must let everyone know the quiet hour is from 9 to 10. Dimmed lighting all the time. Signage. Really, really important. We're improving the signage in DCU, and we're also looking at an app. Create an information sheet about the event so students know what to expect on the day. Really, really important. And also, are there other options for quieter daytime events? So we work a lot with clubs and societies in DCU, and we talk a lot about, do all the events need to be held in a bar, in a pub? So now there's lots of events to do with Harry Potter, chess, forensics, things that other autistic students have said they're very interested in. Just tell me when my time is up and I'll stop. So another principle is to make the environment autism friendly. We have what we call sensory pods. I'll just show you what a sensory pod is. They were donated. They are quite expensive.
I found if
I'll forward on to show you the pod. This is a sensory pod, so a student goes into this capsule and they have time to, I suppose, recharge.
When I was in my old school, with it being so large, the campus, and there being so many people, like, I can't use the canteen, for example. You hear every single squeak and clatter and conversation. It just doesn't work for me. And we all have to share the space we're given, but it's nice to have your own secluded area where you can have control the lighting.
So we have 3 of those sensory pods in DCU. They are the only thing that students need to say they're on the autistic spectrum for. We've lots of other quiet areas and escape hatches, but because the pods there's only 3, so a student needs to disclose they're on the autistic spectrum and they can discreetly go into a room in the library and use the pod. And they're very well used. They help the student really decompress and block out all external stimuli, and then they're in a position to go back to their class. And these are just some pictures of other things that we have. These are acoustically soundproofed hatches, so a student goes and sits in them. Again, they're for everyone because we don't want to create stigma by saying these are just for autistic students. So we have quite a lot of them around campus. We've a lot of quiet spaces and quiet areas with loads of signage so that everyone knows it's a quiet space, and it's well used by everyone and people tend to respect it as a quiet space. We have a quiet room. We don't always have this room, but we try and make sure we have it for any busy days. And we have other quiet areas, actually, 3 meditation rooms. So noise and navigation are huge issues. A 3rd-year student in computer science has developed an app, so a student can go onto the canteen and see the noise level before he enters it. Really important. The student then knows, I can't go there, it's too noisy. We're looking at sound blasting tech and noise reducing headphones, navigation, wayfinding, and signage. Stigma. What are we doing to reduce stigma? So awareness around the university is really important, and again, not just academics, but fellow students, people who work in the canteen. We're holding lots of autism-friendly events. We don't even need to say they're autism-friendly, we say sensory-friendly. We've a Neurodivergent Society. The Neurodivergent Society run a lot of training themselves. We link with other universities and a lot of media coverage. Last year, I think, or in year 1, 50 students disclosed they were on the autistic spectrum. In year 2, 68 students disclosed, so it has gone up. I would say in total there's around 250 autistic students in DCU. There's a lot of academic staff on the autistic spectrum. But a lot of people simply aren't disclosing that they are on the spectrum. So we want to try and raise that because there are really good supports, but the student needs to disclose. Develop understanding. So lots of guidelines and training for everyone. Online resources, library, guest speakers. And the last one. So this is Neurodivergent Society. So they are a committee made up of people on the autistic spectrum, and then there's another 30 ordinary committee members. So they feed back to me, they feed back to DCU to say what is working and not working. They are part of the steering committee. So there's a steering committee analysing the project. The students are on it. Really important, they're forming friendships and they're acting as peers for new students coming in. They're also going out to other universities and talking about what an autism-friendly university looks like, peer mentoring and self-advocacy. Employability is really important because it's 80% unemployment in the autistic community. So we do a lot of one-to-one coaching with interview skills for autistic students. We support them when they're on placement. But the most important thing is we're getting employers to come into DCU to get training in autism awareness, and we're helping them adapt to their environment. So just on the last note, what I think the main thing that DCU has realised is that every single thing that they've changed has benefited everyone, every single person in the university, and also it's created a more diverse culture. And we've realised that really DCU needs, we don't want to attract people who all think the same. You want to attract different thinkers. That's it.
Thank you, Fiona. Ar turime klausimų? Lietuviškai ir angliškai, net nežinau, kaip patogiau tikriausiai. Šiaip yra... Yes.
Užsidėjausi, nes tada lietuviškai, ar ne? Sveiki, aš norėčiau pasiteirauti dėl finansų, nes atrodo, kad tai nėra labai lengvai padaroma, ar ne? Tai įdomu, ar tai buvo jūsų universiteto iniciatyva iš savų lėšų, ar tai buvo projektinės lėšos. Tiesiog tai įdomu praktiniu aspektu.
So the only finance involved in the project was my role. And that was my salary. Otherwise, it comes from a budget within DCU. So like for example, the pods were donated, but otherwise, there's no extra salary, just the coordinator's role.
Ar būtų dar klausimų?
Hello, thank you for the presentation. It was wonderful. I wanted to ask you, perhaps you could elaborate a little bit more about the quiet hours that you mentioned in your presentation.
Sure.
Something about you said that perhaps in the stores and supermarkets they're trying to implement that.
Yeah.
It'd be very interesting to find out a little bit more and how the larger parts of the society, you know, is also sort of like getting involved into this project.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So it's really important that anything we do in DCU, that we try and spread to the community. So we work with an organisation called As I Am. It's very simple, the quiet hours. We've just asked stores between 9 and 11, can you turn off music? You know, the background music? That's all they've done. That's all it involves, just turning off the music. And also sometimes they make a lot of announcements with speakers, so they don't make any announcements and they don't have background music playing. And also they dim the lights. Is that? That's also in like theatres now, you know, we have sensory-friendly cinema screenings where for the cinema, the lights are dimmed and children can walk around. It's all really about the environment.
And would you say quite a large proportion of entities like stores and bars and participate in this?
Yeah. Most Aldi's, most Lidl's, this is in Dublin. All Aldi's and all Lidl's and SuperValue, which is another equivalent to, say, I don't know, a big store here. And why they do it is it's good business. It's bringing in more people, they're earning more money, and they're getting publicity.
That's fantastic.
So, yeah.
I hope we could implement something like this, you know.
It's very
simple.
simple.
And was it, sorry, just really quickly,
Sure.
was that something that the government implemented, or how did they manage to agree to do that, actually?
So just the Neurodivergent Society in DCU, ambassadors, yeah.
Fantastic.
So,
thank you.
little people doing big things.